Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Most of you who are watching me have at least one degree, and if you want more education, it's usually to enhance your career. And this little talk is going to proceed on those assumptions. Sometimes going back to a university is necessary. For example, you can't be a psychotherapist without at least a master's, and in some fields, even if not required, employers tend to prefer advanced degree holders. But more often than you might think, you can learn more, especially more of practical value to you, at dramatically less cost and far more quickly by doing one or more of the following: self study, just in time help at work, tutoring, one shot classes, longer courses, and attending conferences. Of course, if you're pursuing education to enhance your career, you're going to need to convince the employer that you're going to be at least as good an employee for having attended UU, what I'm calling UU instead of State U. And near the end of this talk, I'm going to show you how to do that, that indeed you are a better candidate. If you decide you do need a degree program at the end of this talk, I will discuss how to maximize your chance of admission to that small percentage of school, perhaps surprisingly small percentage of schools that actually are highly selective. First, though, I want to start talking about self-study. If you're motivated, and frankly only if you're quite a self-starter, self-study offers the advantage of control over what you learn, control over your pace, control over when you get to learn or choose to learn, plus of course it's free. Most people study most effectively in short stints, maybe 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off. It is important that whatever the length of the stint, you make yourself learn actively. For example, paraphrase the few paragraphs you just read, or do a problem using the knowledge you just acquired, whatever. Otherwise, you risk, quote, working for the 20 minutes but remembering very little. You often can augment self-study if, as you come up with a question or otherwise are stuck, you write it down and then ask someone about them, perhaps a coworker or a tutor, either the person next to you, say, hey Joe, what do you think? Or with an email after you've collected a number of such questions. Sometimes it's wise to let the tutor decide what you should be learning, but more often that above approach of just asking for help where you're stuck is wiser. Tutors, by the way, by phone, video, or in person in a wide range of areas are available on a couple of websites. One's called tutor.com and the other is Wyzant, Wyzant.com. Now I want to talk about one-shot classes. Even most brilliant instructors soon reach a point of diminishing returns. You give them 1 hour to present their best ideas and it'll be rich. But you give them 10 hours and chances are that your value received per hour will have diminished rapidly. So generally it's better to take 3 1-hour classes from 3 top-rated instructors than 3 hours with one instructor, let alone a semester-long course with one instructor. Given that your aim is career enhancement, you're more likely to curate practical courses if they're online, because the database is on places like LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning and Udemy and Udacity and Coursera contain tens of thousands of courses, mainly short ones, all with student reviews and usually with syllabi. You'll have dramatically fewer choices if you're limited to a local college, not to mention you'd have to get there at a specific time, whereas most online courses are asynchronous. Now a brief bit about full courses. Of course, there is an advantage to the full-length course. It's a large corpus of material is organized for you, and you may enjoy the repeated interaction with the same instructor and with classmates. There are plenty of those to be found at the above platforms the platforms I just mentioned, as well as locally, at LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Udacity, and Coursera. Now I want to talk about conferences. Professional conferences and trade shows enable you to take short trainings from many practitioners, and sessions tend to present more up-to-date material than do university courses, and more concisely. Especially consider pre-conference workshops, which usually are half to 1 day long small group classes on topics of broad interest that are taught by top-rated instructors who are also respected practitioners. Conferences are also worthwhile in that exhibitors show their latest materials and equipment, and the representatives of those exhibitors are often senior people you'd otherwise never get to talk with. You might forego some sessions in favor of visiting the exhibit area. And that's because most people, if they're in sessions, it's going to give you more time to talk with the exhibitor poobahs. And a final plus of attending conferences is that they're filled with people committed to their field. Chatting with them, the breakfast line at the wine and cheese thing, is a way to learn one-on-one while establishing important relationships. Now, I said earlier that I was going to tell you about how to try to convince an employer to hire you over candidates with a higher degree. You can make a persuasive case. Here's an example. This is something you might put in a letter or verbally say, in a cover letter, an application letter, or a networking letter. So many people got degrees at great cost in time and money, yet feel that much of the learning was theoretical and that the main benefit was the piece of paper. So I've foregone State U in favor of UU, which is a kind of a carefully curated set of short practical classes, self-study, tutoring, and attending conferences. And see the attached, which lists some of what I've done as well as some of the main learnings. So I'm hoping you're going to interview me so I can demonstrate what I've learned that could be of practical value to you. And now I want to turn finally to traditional colleges and universities. Sometimes you want a degree or at least a certificate from a university. Employers like them after all, and you like the idea that a long program is structured for you, as well as the idea of having fellow students to be with you for a year or 7, as alas is too often the case with a PhD. Maybe surprising, most universities, even those that seem highly selective, are less so than you might think. Sure, their average GRE score may be high, but that doesn't mean that near the bottom of the class the institution doesn't accept some pretty average folks, especially if they'll pay full freight. That said, a dozen or two of the nation's 3,000 plus colleges are tough to get into. For example, Harvard, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, Chicago, Berkeley, Oxford, Cambridge. The education there, ironically, tends to emphasize the theoretical over the practical. But the name on the diploma signals that you're smart, and employers like that, and some job seekers choose to opt for that sizzle over steak, and it's kind of hard to ask them not to. If that's you, here are a few less well-known admission tips that are particularly relevant to getting you into graduate school. First, look for a distinctive program within each university that appeals to you. And in your application essay, make the case for why that's a good fit for you. Universities like to admit students who are particularly well suited to their offerings. Another tip, see if there's a professor who specializes in something you're interested in. Read an article by him or her, then write or speak to the professor during an office hour. Explain that you're interested in their specialty. Indeed, I've read one of their articles, and you're wondering if she'd tell you a bit about the program and his or her work. At the end of the conversation, if you like the professor in the program, you might ask if that professor is interested in your being their advisee or research assistant. Professors, especially at those research-centric universities, are looking for acolytes willing to help with their research. And finally, if you're local, you might ask an on-target professor if you might audit a course. That gives you a chance not only to try out the professor and the university and the field, but it gives you a chance to strut your stuff and build a relationship with that professor. A letter of recommendation from a professor at that institution can often get you in to an institution that otherwise would have rejected you. It's axiomatic that lifelong learning has become a must, and I'm hoping that one or more of this little talk's ideas will indeed enhance your career. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up, and if needed, a thumbs down. I look forward to any comments you might have. Would like it if you'd hit the share button and share on your social media, and or subscribe to my channel. And in any event, I am Marty Nemko. Thanks for watching.